Well, good morning, church family. It's nice to be with you again. I hope you had a great Easter week, and I've missed you all terribly. So I hope we can spend a few minutes and worship together.
Protector and Savior, Messiah, I know who you are. Alpha, Omega, Jehovah and Abba, Yeshua, I know who you are. You are mighty God, Father, Creator of all, who gave us salvation. Mighty God, Father, Creator of all, Almighty God you are. Jesus, Provider, Protector and Savior, Messiah, I know who you are. Alpha, Omega, Jehovah, Abba, Yeshua, I know who you are. You are mighty God, Father, Creator of all, who gave us salvation. Mighty God, Father, Creator of all, and Almighty God you are. You are mighty God, and you are mighty God, Father, Creator of all, who gave us salvation. Mighty God, Father, Creator of all, and Almighty God you are. And Almighty God you are. And Almighty God you are.
You know, it's good to know in times like this that He is Almighty God, that there is nothing out of His control, and it is our job to trust that He knows what is best for us, what we should be doing and investing in, and so He's calling us out right now, and I would invite you to discover what that is and how you are to live it. But right now, let's sing Oceans together.
You called me out upon the waters, the great unknown. is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. My soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine. Lord, I come and I confess, bowing here I find my rest. And without you I fall apart, and you're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you, and every hour I need you, my one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. Your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Oh, Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, Jesus, you're my hope and stay. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Oh, and Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. And every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
God bless you all. Have a great week, and may you be loving those that you are near. God bless you.
Hey everybody, good to see you again. Hey, have you ever found yourself in a situation where your resources were stretched to the limit and you had no idea what you were going to do? I think that the disciples of Jesus found themselves in that situation over and over again. Last week, we took a look at the miracle where Jesus fed the 5,000, and the disciples certainly had no clue what was going on there. Jesus had asked them to feed all these people who were gathered around. They commented to him that, they would have to go to the market and to buy food would cost them an entire year's salary. And so Jesus says to them, "What do you have?" They find a boy with a schoolboy's lunch. He has, some loaves and some fishes. And they give those to Jesus, and Jesus gives thanks over it. And then he begins to have the disciples pass it out, and they pass it out until all 5,000 people are filled. They're satisfied with the bread that Jesus made. They're satisfied by fish that never swam. And in the end, the disciples pick up 12 baskets full of leftovers. And so you would think that they would be starting to get a clue that Jesus actually had power to take care of any problem that they might face. When Jesus was done with that particular miracle, this is in John chapter 6, verse 14, this is what we read. It says, "When therefore the people saw the sign which Jesus had performed, they said, 'This is truly the prophet who is come into the world.' And so Jesus, therefore, perceiving that they were intending to come and to take him by force and to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself." So Jesus sneaks out. After all this hoopla, after performing this miracle, he sneaks away on his own and spends some time, some alone time with his Father. And the disciples are kind of left there as the crowd begins to disperse, and they decide that they need to go home. And so they go down to the sea, they get in the boat. Jesus is nowhere to be found. So they get in the boat and they head off for Capernaum. Here's how it reads. This is verse 16. It says, "When evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, and after getting into a boat, they started to cross the sea to Capernaum. And it had already become dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. And the sea began to be stirred up because a strong wind was blowing. When therefore they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they beheld Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near to the boat, and they were frightened. But Jesus said to them, 'It is I, do not be afraid.'" Can you imagine that scene? First of all, here you've got these experienced fishermen. They're in a boat. They're out on the sea. The wind has come up. The sea has become rough. And they're straining at the oars, just trying to make some headway against this wind. And they look up into the darkness, and what do they see? They see a man walking on the water heading toward the boat, walking faster than they're rowing. If you read it over in Matthew, you find that they actually thought at first that it was a ghost. And so they cried out to the ghost and they said, who is it? And Jesus answered them and said, it is I. Do not be afraid. And so back over in Matthew, if you read there, and this is in Matthew chapter 14, it says this. It says that Jesus said to them, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, then command me to come to you on the water. And Jesus said, come. And Peter got out of the boat and he walked on the water and he came toward Jesus. But seeing the wind, he became afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And Jesus immediately stretched out his hand and took hold of him and said to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? He actually, in the Greek, it's kind of interesting. He actually called him a little faith. He said, you little faith, why did you doubt? Can you imagine that? Seeing Jesus walking on the water, asking him to invite you to come out to him, and you get out on the boat and you start walking on the water? I think I would be, just like Peter. Immediately I'd start to think, this is way too much for me. There's no way I can handle this. And I'd start to sink. And that's exactly what Peter did. But it's kind of interesting that Jesus calls him a little faith. Why didn't you just believe? And you could have walked out on the water with me. The story goes on. Jesus got in the boat, and immediately they say that the boat was to the other side. Immediately, the boat was to the other side, to the land which they were going, to Capernaum. Another miracle. Jesus walks on water, he gets in the boat, and immediately there's no more straining, there's no more working, there's no more pressing. They just end up where they need to go. So as I was thinking about this passage and trying to kind of wrap my head around how to apply it to my life, it really made me think about the times where I felt like I was being asked to do more than I had the strength or the understanding or the ability to do. Times when I might feel like the Lord is pressing me into something and I really just don't want to go. To be able in those moments to trust him. We sing that song Oceans, and we sing how the Lord calls us, call us out into the water, and we can stand against the waves. And it's really that truth that with Jesus is with us, we can always do anything he asks us to do. We're always prepared because he's always preparing us. We're always prepared for whatever good work it is that he asked us to do. We just have to trust him in the midst of that. I wonder what it is on your heart, or what sort of challenge that you've faced. Maybe just this week, maybe in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, there's been something that's been weighing on your heart and you're wondering, can I step forward into that? Well, this same Jesus, the Jesus who has power over nature, who can walk on water, who has power over time, who can take a boat from one place and immediately have it show up at another place. I don't know, any way you cut it, that's time travel of some sort. And Jesus did that for the disciples. He's God. He's all powerful. He can do anything. So when he asks us for something, we should simply trust and obey. The Lord Jesus will give you what you need in that moment to be able to do whatever it is that he's asking you to do. I probably told you this story before, but there was one time where I was being asked by a friend to come to a hospital and witness to a person that I'd never met who had cancer. And I did not want to do it. I'm not real comfortable talking to people I don't know. You probably don't believe that, but that's really the truth. I'm not super comfortable talking to people I don't know. And especially in situations like that, I thought, what am I going to bring to this person? This nurse who was asking me to come visit, she already had a relationship with him. And I was thinking, why don't you just witness to the guy? Why is it my job? And finally, after a couple of days, though, I just felt the weight on me from the Lord. And so I went. I went to visit. And as I walked in the door of the hospital, that nurse friend of mine came around the corner, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. They moved his room." And she took me to his room. She opened the door. She let me go in. She shut the door behind me. And when I came into the room, he was laying on the bed with an oxygen mask on, and his wife and his daughter were standing near the bed, and they were crying. And I'm just thinking, well, what am I doing here? And so I went up and I took hold of the man's hand, and I asked him, if I could share with him about Jesus. And he shook his head yes. And I shared the gospel with him, how Jesus died for his sins, how he had been raised from the dead as proof God accepted that sacrifice, and how if he simply believed that he could have his sins forgiven and he could spend eternity with God in heaven. And I asked him if he wanted to believe, and he shook his head yes again. And immediately he took one more breath, and the monitor on the side of the bed just flatlined. He died. And his wife looks at me, and there's tears coming down her face, and she says to me through the tears, she says, "He was just waiting for you to come." And it just pierced my heart. The recognition that I might not understand why Jesus is asking something of me. I still don't understand why he had me go talk to that man. But that was a good work that he had prepared beforehand for me to do. And I needed to do it. So when Jesus asks of you, believe that he can give you what you need. He can give you the words. He can give you the strength. He can give you whatever power or insight or wisdom or courage that you need to be able to do what he's asking of you. Our God who can walk on water, who can feed 5,000 with, just a couple of fish and a few loaves of bread. That God is walking beside you every day, everywhere you go. Listen to his voice and do what he tells you. God bless you till next time.